Welcome to the pre-lunch session. Hopefully you won't feel it too much as like, oh, I'm so hungry, I want to go. I'm Charlotte Barratt. I work in the Student and Education Equality, Diversity and Inclusion team, and I'm a project manager, and I work on supporting the transition programmes that we work here, that we present here at Leicester.
And hi, I'm Chantal Bielmann. I am the head of the Centre for Academic Achievement. That is the University of Leicester's sort of centre of support for students on anything to do with their academic studies, so maths, referencing, writing, pretty much anything to do with their assessments. They could come ask for support from our team. And so we work closely with Charlotte on the transition piece as well at the university.
So yeah, we're going to talk about that point where a student might leave you and might come to us, and what happens at that stage and why actually managing that is a really important thing. So poor transition can have a massive impact on students, and you probably might see this if you're working with a slightly younger age group where they're coming into secondary school or coming from into, say, FE, if you work in FE. So you might experience it from them coming to you, and obviously that's what we're doing here as well. So you might have ideas, and we are going to pick your brains a little bit. There's some discussion in this session where we might be asking you what you think, which will help us. So yeah, get your thinking caps on that. But basically, if there isn't a good transition, students are likely just to drop out. They'll just leave, and sometimes they won't even say anything. They'll just disappear off the radar and we won't see them anymore. And basically, we want to stop that. We want people to be able to make an informed decision on what they're doing, and then get that support to get through that process. It is a massive change. But we know that everybody is changing. Everyone is going through that process. So everyone's in the same boat, right? No, not really. Some people are better set up for coming to university, and it may be that they have a network that they are part of. It could be family that is there to support them, or it could be that they're coming into this and they have no idea. And to be honest, having been at university years ago and working in a university, what I experienced, and thinking that if I had kids, then they'd be coming to university about now, it's not the same as it was before either. So actually, even students who have got sort of an experience of their parents having gone to university, they actually don't necessarily have those same skills that their parents had. And that experience is very different now compared to what it was previously. So people who are coming first in their family, underrepresented heritage, so it could be that they don't see many people like them in the courses they're going on. It might be that they're thinking like, who am I? How do I fit into this bit of community as well? Young carers trying to navigate how they might carry that on and have a change in how their education is, but they still want to do it. People who may not have networks at all around them, sort of in that way. So care leavers and estranged students. Students who are managing anything else as well as their education generally will need to have that extra support or a bit of time adjusting. But there is a certain level of everyone needing support and then extras on top of it. So we're not going to say that some students, they just come in and they're great. Some of them, so there will be one or two that come in and just absolutely love it and adjust real quick. But generally, everyone needs to go through a bit of a change when they come to higher education. It is very different to what they've been doing previously, and I think that's part of the thing. So the benefits of this good transition, or transition support in a way, is to uncover a lot of things that they didn't expect or don't understand about what's happening next. So I think we all have an idea of what university's like. I think I'm going to make a massive assumption that everyone here has been to university, and but it's going to be different wherever they're going, whether they're staying at home and commuting in, if they're going into halls, all sorts of things. And there's also lots and lots of jargon, and you probably have the same in your roles. We have hidden processes. I think it's just mentioned before about the idea of like having to book an appointment and do all these other things as well. So how do we support students in those little things that can just make their lives a bit easier and help with that transition? Thinking about the key facts, because they're going to get totally swamped with information and exciting things that they can do in the first couple of weeks, but then what are they here for and how do they need to settle in? What is their expectations with that as well? And then thinking about those new connections they're going to make. I think every now and then someone gets lucky and they're like, I know that person, they come from the same area, they're same school, I know them, this is my little bit of familiarity. But if, like me, you go as far away from your hometown as you possibly can to study, you start over. And then how do you do that? Again, Dr. Dominica earlier was talking about that. How do we start a conversation? How do we sort of step into that making friends role as well? And signposting. There's a lot of new resources, new support and things like that that universities have. So making sure that students have that signposting, but not just in that first week or so, but for a little bit longer as well. So that's the benefits of having good transition, and we're going to sort of go into more detail in a bit. But first of all, we want to sort of pick your brains a little bit. And it feels like we just started, but we're going to throw it straight out there. And we want to think about what skills are important for students starting university. So we're going to give you 5 minutes on your tables with your flip chart paper. We're going to think about what you think are the skills that these students are going to need to make that good transition. And then we'll see how it all fits in with what we've got planned and what we provide. Are we all on the same page to help from both sides? Okay, so yeah, 5 minutes.
And if anyone is online, I don't know there, but if there's anyone online, they can obviously add their thoughts. And then maybe you can vocalize their ideas. If you could, that'd be great. But yeah.
I'm going to set a timer. Is there a speaker to do that?
Yeah,
To be fine. So we're going to be waffle. You've only got 45.
yeah. That's why I put the discussion.
Yeah.
Wait, we're going to record actually. It's really interesting because across America that we manage, especially making sure people like connected with people. And you automatically give them a t-shirt in a tribe. So everyone in your tribe that t-shirt, and then everyone, you were supposed to do all these activities back in people, not all of them. And then it was all about raising money for charity for the community, and it was a competition across all the universities in the country. And whoever raised the most money would get like this big like accolade from the state prime minister. Wow. So that was my orientation. So like as people, it's great. Just in time, it's like it's forcing you. It's kind of like they know it's hard, so we're just gonna not give you guys the option of shots. And like everyone says it. Like a few people might not. Like I didn't do it all the time, but like generally speaking. It was also the other thing that it was also our varsity that they started
At the start rather than the
that all the senior level, etc. Those teams would have games that everyone would go support the teams. So music yeah, and it's also part of the university that interesting.
whereas we have that this month.
Yeah, I've never understood that. We still got like 3 minutes.
Yeah. Where time gets distorted.
I've done this many a time. I've gotten good. The mind map is what I want.
I mean, some people also we must read
Doing good if you get cut off. And so then there was actually yesterday or something, then we had two posts about this dog, all everyone said my dog was featured. She's Leon Berger across the German line. It's a gold fluffy dog.
Yeah.
Always funny. She can be a bit intimidating for sure. I love her. She's a rescue as well. So she's been a bit job at trying.
You get to know what they were.
Oh, yeah, I really got more. I did look into this, like during COVID, I think everyone had crazy thoughts. I like saw that moving back to Canada during COVID. And then I started looking into like, how do I get back over to Canada with my dog? And I looked at like, so I get this sleep and whatnot, but one shit that my dog was, it would be like going out in the site. And then I was going to train, like, it would be like a month out, it was a lifestyle training, it was a constant 5 times more.
One of my friends, adopted a dog. Yeah, China.
Yeah.
You know, so like, how do you even?
Croatia, lots of rescue organizations that help. It's not cheap. My friend brought a dog over.
There we go. 5 minutes is up.
So,
Yeah, no, you can.
okay, so hopefully you all had a chance to chat, and we're just going to go around to each table, and I'm going to ask Jay here to represent the online people to just kind of share back your thoughts on what skills, because I'm sure we all have a large amount of thoughts on this. So I'm going to start here.
So the digital skills, like a lot of kids still don't know how to use Teams, Google, you know, independent skills, cooking, cleaning, travel, referencing, confidence skills, willingness to ask for help,
Yeah.
financial capability, balancing education and their social life, and self-awareness.
Self-awareness. I did really like the digital skills one is something that's been coming up quite a lot in terms of there's a lot of times academics in particular, I find there's an assumption that students just know how to use all these digital tools. And the team I work with, we're actually finding the exact opposite in terms of like they don't even know how to save files because everything's saved for them. But the problem is everything's saved for them. They don't have that sense of creating drafts. So the idea of even drafting things doesn't exist because the moment you start typing, it's saved automatically. So digital skills is something that's been on my mind quite a bit. So yeah, really spot on. And all the others referencing confidence, self-regulation. I'm going to jump to the table at the back now.
So yeah, I think we had quite a few that have already been mentioned, but social skills, resilience, problem solving, research of where you're going, negotiation, about like managing expectations and thinking realistically in terms of like budgeting and finance, organizational skills, I think that's pretty much it.
Confidence in asking.
Yeah, confidence and asking for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say resilience, what does that mean to you, everyone here? Because it's a term that does get popped up quite a bit, and I think there's an interesting conversation on what that actually means. So, any thoughts? Yeah.
Out of your comfort zone to cope with homesickness, being away from home, and
Yeah.
so just coming to.
I heard an interesting way of students being referred to a few months ago. I work at school of understanding alterations. Let's say that for the session this afternoon. A colleague who I've known some time in HU referred to students nowadays as soft. Hence the resilience.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
So it was interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
I didn't push it any further as to what they meant
Meant by the
so I
soft, yeah.
just took it on face value, but I could see where they were going with that.
Mm.
And I think that's where the resilience tenacity comes into it, of how, I think that what they were inferring was is that life can be hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
University can be hard if you move away from home, and you have to be toughened up by the time you get to university to deal with things where independent adult learning environments exist.
Okay. In the conversations around resilience, I often hear about working with people in careers as well as people who study psychology, for example, has this idea about bounce back ability. So when you have a setback, so when things aren't going well, how do you get yourself through that period of hardship and through that period? Some of these things might not be something you can control, but the things you can control. So if it is something like a setback in terms of maybe a little bit of you got some negative feedback, how can you bounce back from that and maybe not fixate on it as well? So resilience has a lot of things that link to a lot of other skills. So that's why I kind of fixated on a bit, because it's one of those, it's very much on point and discussed quite a bit, especially with careers as well, as thinking about how do you have the resilience to apply for job after job after job and might get rejections as well. And that's resilience to keep putting yourself out there as well. So I'm going to go to this left table.
I'm right. I mean, sorry to be a huge pain, but we've got a couple of people online and they can't quite hear it when it's going around the room. So do you mind speaking into the microphone?
Thank you, Joe. Sorry about that.
We won't ask for any like pop idol auditions or anything like that, I promise.
And like how to be brave and the skill of doing that encompasses lots of things. Knowing when or how to ask for help as well, and what's the right time to do that, and when is it just a normal bump in the road that you just bounce back from. But yeah, everything else is what.
That's great. And if you have anything to add to the discussion, Charlotte. Oh, and the online group, I already forgot them. Horrible.
Online we had research skills, we also had critical thinking skills, analytical skills, and we also had someone suggest about self-regulation and just general organisation skills as well.
Yeah, I think those core academic skills, I think, is another big one in terms of those are the things that are going to get you through to the other side on those assessment side of things. So definitely looking at the academic skills as well as what I would call in some cases personal skills that will help you, through the entire journey at the university, which everyone highlighted, like the cooking, being aware of, how to come back from setbacks, organization skills, which is personal, but also so important for academic things. So skills are a very important part of that kind of transition piece, in the sense that through that transition, we need to help students think about what are the things that are going to help them at this new space, at this new place, what's going to help them with their assessments, but also what's going to help them with settling in to a new city, to a new environment, to a new country. I'm from Canada. I moved here and it was a completely my big shock was, why is everything shut down at 5 p.m.? So when I first got here, I didn't have an Ethernet cable. So I couldn't call my family, didn't have a phone. So it's those are the transitions universities can definitely help with, and just help in advance of coming here. And that's where it's going to lead into a discussion around so that transition piece at the University of Leicester. And I put the quote from, I don't know if it's Chemers, but the idea of people with high self-efficacy beliefs. And this is what everyone kind of touched upon in terms of confidence, but confidence in their own abilities. So and this is something that was touched upon at the first talk, as well in Dr. Dominique's talk, in the sense that we're having a large group of students coming to university this past year, in the coming years, where their confidence is actually at quite a low level, and are also a big fear for failure and so on. And so with the idea that they're coming in with a lower self-efficacy belief, we need to figure out a way to help them get through that challenge, because that's going to make that transition actually more difficult. So in a sense, how do we grow confidence at an institution? So how do we grow that self-efficacy? And so my role at this institution is to help with that academic, but I believe also strongly in embedding the broader skills. So when we have an academic skills session that's perhaps about time management, I think about it, we often talk about it in terms of real life scenarios, not just about how manage your time with regards to this essay coming up. So introducing that skills language as part of the transition project that we do here, but also embedding skill support so that it's a thing that doesn't just pop up as a bolt-on to the curriculum. It's embedded within the curriculum. It's embedded throughout everything that we're doing. So then that way it's not something that's just said when things are going rough. It's like, actually, this is something I can think about and it's a good use of my time. So encouraging reflection as a really core part of academic and broader skills development. And my team and what I do at the institution is generally around centralized support, but then we go out to schools and we work with colleagues and other professional services to ensure that that support can be accessed in a variety of different ways. So they can come centrally to us, we're based in the library, or they can go to the schools, they can go online. There's lots of different places. And core to this is, again, like a healthy approach to skills development. And I think a really core element too is, I think there's some elements of busting myths as well for sometimes with students. And sometimes there's an idea that skills learned in secondary school is enough for post-secondary school. It's the beginning. There are other skills. There are more skills to develop while they get to here. So I think we need to kind of encourage people to think of skills development as not something that just ends. I still learn about resilience when I'm an adult. So it's part of that continuing professional development. And we need to continue that chain. That skills is not something that just ends. It's like English language is probably a great example of that. You know, if you're learning a language, you don't just stop. You still learn, you still need to practice it. You still need to engage with it. If you don't engage with it, you're going to lose it. So it's encouraging that fact that we don't just stop learning a skill. It's something that we regularly use and regularly engage with. The learning approaches used in secondary education is the same at university. They're similar, but sometimes they can be vastly different. I can just think of people going into lab settings. The lab settings at some universities, completely different rules. They have completely different setups. They're coming in with petri dishes set up for them, and they have specific rules that they have to obey. So it's thinking, again, the skills that they have to learn, they have to be kind of reminded that it's not the same. Things are changing. It's how do we support them to be aware of that change? Expectations are not always the same as well. There's that idea that it's like the same expectation. It's kind of what I think Dr. Dominique was talking about earlier, in a sense of there's this element of pressure that they always have to do the best. And I think sometimes they get that feeling kind of coming through sometimes. When you get to the university, the expectations are like, you need to do your best. And there's a biggest thing I find right now is often they compare with their friends all the time in terms of their marks, etc. And it's like, what I want to do what they're doing. And it's like, what do you want to achieve, and how do we help that conversation so they're thinking healthy in their own right in terms of their skills development. The one that I find fascinating by far, as somebody who didn't do their undergraduate in the UK, is the fact that first year doesn't count. Honestly, I've seen students in second year who will be really struggling with things that you would think this is something that they could have probably dealt with in their first year. And when we have a kind of an open conversation, it's around this attitude that the first year doesn't count. And that's a myth I'm very happy to try busting, in the sense that while the marks don't necessarily link to your overarching outcome of your degree, the habits you pick up really do matter. So if you don't pick up the best skills, transitions, that kind of support in that first year, it will definitely have that knock-on effect into year two. And there's always a step up. Nurses in particular, they're very much expected to go from level 4 to level 5 to level 6 in each successive year. People in economics are expected to go from a certain level of mathematics all the way to differential equations and panel regression analysis and all these things. So there's definitely a step up. So if students think first year doesn't count, second year is going to be even harder, almost different type of transition for them. And then focusing on just your studies is all that matters. And I think because of what can't remember his name, the guy who spoke at the beginning from UCAS said, in a sense, that students don't have time for the social. They're only fixating on one thing. Now, I do feel like they're losing out. So it's trying to figure out, how do we support the students to make sure they're not seeing that the university is just about their studies, because then you can get tunnel vision, and that's where the fear of failure can just get stronger and stronger. And if they get a setback, that bounce back ability will be hit hard. And it's trying to encourage. So there's a lot. This is what I think, like skills, there's a lot. And so what are we doing at Leicester? And I'm going to pass back over to Charlotte.
So currently the programme that we run is called HeadStart, and that name is changing. But in the last few weeks, we've gone through various iterations trying to find a good fit. But basically what we do here is we've started offering a set of sessions that start usually as soon as possible after the August bank holiday. It's originally we would do more things sort of in person. So pre-COVID, I was running mature student welcome days because my focus was mature students, and they worked really well. It was just a couple of days. It was, again, myth busting, talking about systems and things that they might need to know to help mature students settle in, because mature students have a high rate of dropping out because suddenly it's a big life change and it's all unmanageable. And then during COVID, that developed into an online programme for a wider group of students, because we realised people hadn't visited, and it was to try and fill a gap. But we've carried it on. So we're now in sort of the third or fourth year of this, and it changes very slightly every year. But essentially, it's a couple of online sessions a day. So it doesn't matter if a student is in Leicester, even in the UK, they could be anywhere in the world. And it covers a whole range of different things. So they can drop in and say, actually, this is what I'm thinking about at the moment. I want to find out about this. So it includes academic skills. We have sort of lunchtime sessions on academic skills. We have sessions on finance, on what scholarships and bursaries might be available if they haven't already looked at that, because we know that students are leaving things very much to the last minute, even down to like where they're going, but also sort of like, oh, well, okay, I've got my student finance, but what else is there? So we know cost of living is a massive issue. We signpost resources for those financial, like the finance side of things as well. We talk about part-time work, how they might be able to find that if that's something they're interested in. So we do quite comprehensive sessions, and as much as we can, we get our student ambassadors involved, and they help present and give their experience of it as well. So it's not just coming from someone like me or someone from sort of Chantal's team or the other teams we have. We talk about navigating campus, but not just in the sort of like a campus tour kind of way, but also talk about room numbers, which sounds really basic, but when you're given sort of a timetable that is written in jargon, much as we argue with them about could this be clearer, it has a code on it that tells you which building it is. It doesn't tell you the building though. Then it has a room code on it. How do you even find that? How do I know where I'm going? How do I decipher some of the jargon that we have out there? So we actually have like a jargon busting section. Navigating our digital spaces, mentioned about like the digital skills. So it's not just sort of whether to save or not, but suddenly we're talking about Blackboard, or we're talking about some name we've given something that we expect everyone to know. And we've started telling people what that is, rather than that sort of like, oh, you'll work it out. We're taking all of those, you'll work it out of it basically, and saying this is what it is. And then we have specific sessions for different student groups. So we might do something specific for international students because we know they have a lot of visa questions. So we have a space for that. Again, mature students, it could be, we have sometimes have a session for carers. To be honest, they're not very well attended, but we know that they're getting our information on a one-to-one basis as well. So it's interesting who will come forward to the sessions and who won't. And so we cover basically our undergrads, our postgrads, distance learning students. We try and cover everyone because a lot of this is the same. And people just need that extra support to go, actually, I want to know about this. And the feedback that we get, we survey them. So we ask little questions at the end of sessions. We get people chatting to each other throughout the month, because it goes on all the way until sort of the week of the Friday before term starts. We get the same names pop up on the sessions sometimes. So you start to get to know people. So we say hello to them in the online session, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, you're recognizing that I'm here, and they're typing things into the chat. And then we survey them 6 weeks later and sort of say, what have you got out of it? What have we missed? That maybe something's happened in the last 6 weeks that we didn't cover. Can we make that better? But also, have you done anything based on what we've suggested? So we suggest things like, if you're new to Leicester, going into the city centre and having a look around, because some students might not want to venture out. They might think, oh no, everything's here. They don't really need to go too far from campus to have most of the things they need. So it's like, have you gone to see something which isn't on campus? Have you been to a local museum? Have you been shopping in the city centre? And just to see if they're taking actions from that. 50% of the students who go on, who come to the sessions do something based on those sessions. So we know it does have an impact. Interestingly, that 50% each year hasn't changed, as in it's like always 50%. But we'll take that. we think it works. And yeah, we monitor those students, and so far what we can see, the ones that we can track, they don't tend to drop out in the first 6 weeks, and they don't tend to drop out after the first year. But that's just the evidence we've got so far. I can't give you specifics on that because the numbers are quite low, but it looks like those students are more likely to carry on. We've not looked at grades, but you know, at least they are still here and we know they're still engaging. In fact, from the mature student side of things, when we did those sessions, the mature students who came to those welcome events and who sort of came and met other people were more likely to be more involved in things like student societies, getting involved being a course rep. So this is actually really key for that kind of engagement at university. But our problem is that trying to get people engaged in this before they take that step. So the ones that do come along do get a lot out of it. So we are ramping it up this year. We're changing it. We're going to probably call it, I say probably at the moment, it's called Essential Skills. And that's essential skills for learning or for sort of getting on at university. It's still got the online activities. But what we're doing is linking that further through the induction week, so through freshers, through what the departments at the university are doing, and trying to make sure that some of that information will be repeated. So rather than it just being like, here's a session, that's it, that's all you're getting, we may be talking about things at certain points during the year. So it's going through induction week and all the way through their first year of study. So schools will be, I say schools in academic schools, will be expected to deliver at least 4 sessions throughout their year, which has that key information at the appropriate time. So we'll be talking about basically assessments and our mitigating circumstances system, which is basically around sort of like, if you can't do your assessment, what happens then? At the time when they might be thinking about it or need it, rather than in their first week where it just goes straight over their head because they've been out, they've been to freshers, they've learned about societies, and there's just too much going on. We'll talk about feedback when they get feedback rather than feedback before, and it's much more structured. So yeah, that's what we're trialing. I say trialing. So what we're going to do this year, I'm going to monitor it and see if that more scaffolded support again hits more people and gives those students a lot more to help them boost all those skills that you've written down. So yeah, pass you back.
And alongside HeadStart or Essential Skills for Learning will be the skill support offered through the Centre for Academic Achievement. Centre for Academic Achievement came from the Academic Skills Centre, but as with other universities, Academic Skills Centre was often seen as a place for remedial, like where students were told like, oh, you're just not doing that well, go over here to get a bump up, etc. And we wanted to shift the narrative to say, come here if you want to get the best and achieve what you want to achieve at the university. And so the goal here is to support students to reach their academic potential, what they see as what they want to get at university. It's centralized. We're based in the library, which has probably the biggest foot traffic at the university. We offer one-to-one support, which is probably our biggest take up. A lot of students really appreciate that one-to-one support. That's with academic librarians to talk about using the library, searching for things, referencing. That's with people who can help with academic writing, assessment literacy, understanding feedback. As our academic colleagues are lovely, but they are not the best at sometimes writing coherent feedback. And for whatever reason, sometimes students feel really nervous about going back to the academic saying, I don't understand your feedback. So they often come to us, of which then we try to help build that confidence of having a dialogue with the academic. So sometimes we're often seen as a safe space for students if they're a bit shy or they feel like a bit intimidated just because it's a professor. They might just not be used to the culture here where you can't just go talk to the academic. A lot of them just are happy to be called by their first name. Again, not a North American thing. I called my professors professor can't remember my professional last name. Shipley, that was a good one. But yeah, so it's a different culture sometimes, and so sometimes people don't think about going to access support. So coming to us is seen as a safe space, and then we try to encourage that relationship to grow within the schools with the academics and also their personal tutors. Our biggest, again, like one of our big support is again maths and statistics. Lots, because of the rise in interest in maths and STEM, we're seeing lots more students coming to university, and maybe they had a gap between maybe the GCSE levels and coming to university. So they're very nervous about their maths and they're not confident in their maths. So our maths team offers quite a bit of one-to-one support. We're also running workshops and drop-ins. We're offering in-curricular support. I put Thrive in, didn't realize we're changing the name.
One of the names that we've been through for the Essential Skills Programme. And
so
then
we
ditched that and changed it.
In some cases, we find it's much easier when we see, for example, this past year, the School of Engineering had a cohort of students, and within that cohort, they had 50 students really struggling with some of the calculus and some of the maths that they needed to do. And my team, well, in the world, we can offer 50 one-to-ones to a lot of students in like 1 week, for example. So in those instances, we work with the schools to go into the schools and we offer basically sort of a revision session. And our team with the maths have kind of a very broad skill level to kind of teach the maths in perhaps a way that can help them catch up to that level. And that does work. So we work really closely with the schools, the academics, when they see a cohort that might be really particularly struggling. So that's something that we're doing quite a bit more. We do a lot of revision sessions as well. So one thing I've noticed is that there's less social studying. So where people would get together to study for an exam, it's not a thing. And so we're organizing revision sessions. So we ran these online in January in economics. We had 60 students come along to each of those. There were 3 of them. And they really appreciated an opportunity to have an academic there to help with their revising, so that if they weren't sure if they were doing something right or if something was correct, there was somebody there to help. And it's for all students. So we see lots of students who might have specific learning difficulties, who have autism. We see, again, all students from undergrad, foundation, all the way up to the occasional postgraduate researcher. And I just want to emphasize that we are very much a space of collaboration. We work with the academics and students, education services to support skills throughout the university, so from the center to the curriculum. And part of that is also sharing information. So the amount of students that we're seeing, things that I'm interested in is like, who are we not seeing? And how do we see those groups of students? Some of the students that we do see are ones who've never accessed support, and that's great. But there's a bunch out there that and I'm sure Charlotte will also know, that just are kind of more difficult to access. We want to provide insight to academics. Sometimes they need to hear from an external that maybe the way their course is organized may not be conducive to their cohorts that they're receiving. So giving insight into the student struggle, acting as a champion for them. And gaining that insight directly from the students themselves, because surveys are great, but sometimes this qualitative level of data can easily be shared as well.
Yeah.
So I think for our last bit, I think we're getting close. We're going to just have a quick discussion on how can you guys help in terms of that transitions piece, the students that you are working with, how can you help us? We're being very selfish here. We're going to use you guys again. Is there anything you think you guys can help? So this, again, just on the other side of the flip chart, feel free to add your thoughts. And if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think it's finding out. So one thing, actually thinking about sort of like that discussion, that we also get the feedback from the academics about what is going on and the perceptions that they get from the students. And one of the things that comes out, and it's more of a major problem in healthcare profession training and courses, is that students are still very much working to assessment. That they're like, oh, but do I need to know this for the assessment? And this came from our physiotherapy course, and they're like, everything we teach you, you're going to need to know in your physiotherapy career. It's not just about that grade at the end, it's about everything you've learned. So it's interesting to think sort of like, I know that it might not necessarily be anything that's happening I know you're definitely not sort of like, come on, this, you only need to know this for this thing and that's it. But it's that perception that they're coming through education and they're like, oh, it's the same on that side. So that's just my little hint on how can we help that? How can we get them thinking about learning as a lifelong learning thing and not just that, oh, but I've just got to do well in that one thing. It's a very societal issue, but how can we help?
I'm just aware of time, so
Yep.
we'll do 2 minutes for just a chat amongst yourselves and then a quick share back and then any questions. And again, with the online group, Jay, their champions, excellent.
Go to time.
Yeah, it's just, you got it at 12:40. I'm just looking at my watch if you want to put a timer. Now Leslie's doing more revision. Yeah, I just said, well, there's not enough to do. You want to answer everyone. And she just, we don't agree with the idea that we go in each, but we just need help kind of coordinate revision session. Yeah. And so students see this, so they just, and they will attend. So we're doing 3 more for PC 103. Statistics and which has in the past been very difficult for me. Yeah. And so we're meeting again with Lisa and a couple of the economics people talk about what's going on. Yeah, okay. So it's a big issue. Yeah, and like talk about practice. Lisa says it, but I was talking about like changing the curriculum or changing the way they're teaching. Yeah, that's a very big ask. Yeah, they find it really difficult. Trying to get them to think maybe we should adapt how
What are we doing rather than what the students? Yeah, I think that is a big change, isn't it? So, well, we're doing the same. Some people get it, so it must be right. And it's like, but 50% isn't getting it. Then it's
explaining the curriculum, saying, "Oh, this is next to etc." Yeah, and I just say, okay, that's something that's outside your control at the moment.
What can you control? Your plate.
Exactly. So it's just like trying to get them to think like that. I agree with the amount of lunch that they're like literally there's almost all the economic students first year Ireland if you just manage to move there. And the other thing is there's engineering was had an intern which they were able to see who was struggling with young. Unfortunately, because they have an online exclusion, there's no way that they can improve it otherwise. It's like Blackboard, they just share each other, etc. So even if they weren't, they have an open book exam, an open book element. Yeah. So the marks that they receive at the midterm is very much bumped up. And so you can tell who's struggling. Yeah, until it's too late. So we have to go based off of previous cohorts, you know. So
Who's most likely to struggle?
yeah, so they think, you know, so like, maybe you can talk to you guys, which is the data to see with struggling. They think it's always linked down to the basic C, which gives you another path. It's an assumption, but you don't know the ones that are free that. Yeah, I don't like in the end. I said like I don't want to get like if that's what you're saying, I don't trust you. I did say please go talk to the educator to look closely at your data if you want the actual information. I know business are saying yeah. So yeah, so we're looking at different proactive measures. The other one I'm thinking we're hoping to develop because we've got a new MSc in data science program starting where you don't use any math to do it. Interesting. Oh yeah, very close.
Shall I grab a microphone?
Yes. You want to go around now? I think that's 2 minutes. Charlotte's going to come around again. I think we'll start at this table and work our way around. I know it's not a lot of time, but just aware that we might be going to run over a little bit and lunch is beckoning.
Yeah.
Thank you for at the table the first time. So we're going to listen to this table feedback first.
You were saying that we maybe get some information from you about and universities about what you would like us to do. So like you said about referencing myth busting, we can put that into like our personal development curriculums, what to expect in the first week. Because we have, I think, pieces of that already, you know, maybe a more comprehensive.
Yeah.
Would actually be a good idea.
Very helpful already.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's a good
It's
idea.
really obvious.
Great. About sharing information with parents as well, how we can share that so that everyone's
On the same page. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
mentioned that we have insight visits, universities, encouraging them to attend open days. But also maybe we could use more of our alumni to give advice from recent students who are at university, which they might engage with more so than just listening to it from us. And also we mentioned that we run quite good with use the EPQ, which is constantly referencing, but that not all students will do that. So I guess if you've not done it for those subjects, you've not done the EPQ, may have just gone through your GCSEs and A levels with exams.
Yeah.
So that's probably something that
Definitely.
is a big change, but yeah.
I've noticed this, yeah. People who don't do that often will struggle with things like referencing, writing paragraphs, writing anything.
So do you actively notice, I think this could be a sales pitch for our EPQ tutor, do you actively notice which students have done the EPQ or not?
Students come to us and they tell us in our one-to-ones that they've done an EPQ versus the ones who don't tell us, but we can definitely see differences in the writing, especially around just simply as paragraph writing. Paragraph writing, we've noticed, is definitely a struggle for students who don't have the EPQ, and we're trying to start them from scratch in some cases in terms of how to write a cohesive paragraph for an assessment, like an essay. So yes.
So it's a double benefit to EPQ, not just the grade side of it, so you're getting benefits from that, but also the skills side.
And it's linking to that, what you cut at the very beginning about that kind of equity element. It's like, these guys had that, that's great. So now it's like, how do we get those other students to get to that kind of same level?
Preparation for lifelong learning is important. So like making sure that they have the idea that they're not just going to go to university, learn what they need for the assessment, and then kind of that's all they need to know. And looking at it as like kind of their whole career, and just like preparing them for that difference in their current learning and what they would expect. We also said to embed it within the curriculum, because obviously a session with a career advisor, they might just take within it, whereas if it's embedded, then they're kind of hearing about it a few times and it's more likely. And we also spoke about getting parents involved, so like ensuring that parents are kind of also pushing like the preparation in terms of like academic skills, and I think that's everything. Yeah.
Thank you. So we've got nothing on from the online group. I will say, one of the things my team also does is we do run study skill sessions in outreach sessions. So we often get students who are year 12, I think is the right term. I'm really bad with terminology sometimes, sorry. I would call them seniors, but we don't do that here. But sometimes schools will contact the University of Leicester and will sometimes put on kind of a skill session for those groups of students. So that's something I guess you could do it not just at the University of Leicester, a lot of universities, you can more than welcome just reach out to them. And if that's something that you think you can do, that's another way I think you can get students to see the university and hear from people who work with students at universities, types of skills and what to expect.
Fantastic.
I'm aware we're running over, but if you did have any questions, those are a reference.
We've just got our reference there.
Students that compulsory, like how do you incentivize them to take part, or is there anything?
For both of us, that's the trick, isn't it? The engagement element. So part of it is a lot of it is working with our academic colleagues. So we pretty much push everything to like the personal tutors, to the module leads. It's embedded on their Blackboard program. So there's like literally a button called assist. So if they're having trick, they can click the assist button and it'll tell them exactly where they can get any type of support they want. We just tried so many different routes to just reach them. So we know some students will find a one-to-one really intimidating. So and it's similar with the HeadStart, it's great to have an online because it can be quite anonymous. And so we're finding, for example, men, for whatever reason, really enjoy online sessions and will come to those more often than to a one-to-one. And so trying to have as many different ways in which people can engage, I think is just going to help us capture more. And then the other way is literally just thinking about high value elements. So emails, they'll ignore an email from my team, but if we get the academics or the administrators linked to that particular school, they'll read those emails. So it's knowing those little tricks as well.
Yeah, we can't make people come to the online sessions, but we record them as well.
Yeah.
So, and we switch the recording off before questions happen. So we make it really clear to anyone who's online that you know, the information part will be recorded and they can pop their questions in the chat if they're happy doing that, like during the session. But if not, we will stop that and say, right, what do you want to ask? So it's creating that safe space. And then this bit's not going to be broadcast, but anyone who misses it, it is there available. Currently, it's only available to our current students, but from this year, we're going to put them on YouTube so that people be able to just access whenever and look at last year's. In fact, we run it now, starting to run it more than once a year because we have more than one start date. So students should be able to go back and go, actually, that would have been useful. Oh no, it's still there. I can go and look at it, kind of thing. And
Yeah, similarly, looking at ways of trying to bring out some of our resources, because also most students will search for help through Google.
Mhm.
And so if what we can make sure is always open access, it means that prospective students can benefit. You guys can benefit. And then it just makes it easier for students to find the information really quickly. Any other cool thing?
Yes, really interesting what you said about students not being able to write paragraphs, because I've got a my daughter's doing GCSEs, and I know that in GCSE, even the English level, there's always the tendency for the pure paragraphs and ones like that. So something is happening between you taking their GCSE language and then coming out of their level threes, and what that is, I don't know, but
This is probably me not knowing, I don't know if this is going to be quite PC, but you know what I've said about language being a skill that you have to keep using. So students who stop English at a GCSE and then focus their A level, say on STEM, will struggle because they're not using that skill regularly. And also because when you get to the university, it's not just about writing the paragraph, it's actually understanding how to do the research behind the paragraph. I'm finding interesting how students will read for the assessment, but not take notes, so not process. And then when they will, but the way they write is they just think, I'll just slot this in. So it's like a puzzle piece rather than thinking about it more organically. So it's something that I'm like, my background is largely supporting researchers. So I kind of switched to this side. It's like, this is really interesting, and I almost want a research project on it, to learn more. But we do pretty much go back to Peel. We're doing a huge amount. Like, I think I was talking to my colleagues yesterday. We think about 80% of our consultations goes back to Peel if it's about writing.
just thinking, because it doesn't stop between master's level and PhD level. When I started writing for sort of that research style, I got told my writing was awful. And I had to relearn it. So I relearned how to write paragraphs, and there was no gap for me in between those two things. And yet the style and the expectation was very different as well. So it could be that actually, yes, that GCSE level is absolutely fine. Maybe they've not forgotten that, but actually what we're expecting is something entirely different. So there's no join up. We don't communicate enough to say
That's true.
It's the same thing or it's different.
That's fair. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
We'll let you have lunch now. Sharing. Should I leave?
I've just left on everything and it should have worked.